Sometimes the past doesn't knock. It slips under the door like smoke, filling the room before you realize you can't breathe. Vincent Marino family restaurant had long since closed for the night. The tables were cleared, chairs stacked, and the last scent of garlic and simmering tomato sauce lingered in the air. Vincent Marino sat alone at a corner booth, his large hands resting on a chipped coffee cup gone cold. The neon sign outside buzzed faintly, glowing red against the rain-slick street. At 55, Vincent looked older than his years. Deep lines carved his face, and the weight of 1,000 unspoken confessions pressed on his shoulders. For 20 years, he had fought to bury the shadows of his youth, the favors, the debts, the nights when blood stained his hands. He was a man who wanted to be remembered as a father and a cook, not as a soldier in the old wars of Chicago's streets. NNBUT. The envelope on the table in front of him told another story. It had been slipped under the door just after midnight. No name, only his written in block letters. Vincent Marino. NHE hadn't opened it yet. He stared at the thick paper, the way a man might stare at the barrel of a gun. His gut told him the past had finally come calling. NNTHE door creaked open. Michael, his eldest son, stepped inside, still in his work suit, tie loosened, hair damp from the rain. He was 30, handsome, restless, too restless for Vincent's liking. "You're still here?" Michael asked, frowning. "It's past midnight, Pop." Vincent gestured to the envelope. "Somebody left me a letter." Michael picked it up without asking, tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in neat black letters, Nen. The fire in 63 was no accident. "I know the truth. We need to talk." Michael's brows furrowed. "What's this supposed to mean?" Vincent took the letter back, his face tightening. "It means somebody remembers." Michael leaned closer. "The fire? Which fire?" Vincent's eyes hardened. "It doesn't concern you." Michael bristled. "You always say that. You keep us in the dark like we're children. Maybe it's time I know what kind of man my father really is." Before Vincent could answer, the payphone in the corner of the restaurant rang. Both men turned toward it. At this hour, nobody called. Not unless it was serious. Vincent rose slowly, the weight of inevitability in his steps. He lifted the receiver, in Marino. He said, and a gravelly voice came through, one he hadn't heard in decades. "Vince, it's Enzo Romano. You didn't think the past would stay buried forever, did you?" Vincent's hand clenched the phone. "What do you want, Enzo?" Jorde's dark chuckle echoed over the line. "What's mine? What your family owes me. And if you don't meet me tomorrow, I'll make sure your children learn the truth the hard way." Then Vincent's jaw tightened. He said nothing, only slammed the receiver down with a force that rattled the booth. Michael stared at him, eyes narrowed. "Who was that?" Vincent looked at his son, the weight of history heavy in his voice. "It was a ghost, Michael. And ghosts don't rest easy." Outside, in the shadows across the street, a figure watched the restaurant with a cigarette glowing faintly in the rain. Detective Frank Doyle, long haunted by the fire of 63, had just found the trail he'd been waiting for. Some cases don't die. They sit in the bottom drawer gathering dust until one night the drawer slides open on its own. Detective Frank Doyle leaned against his unmarked car across the street, rain pattering on the windshield. His cigarette glowed in the dark like a small beacon, the smoke curling upward and mixing with the mist that clung to the Chicago streets. NNHE had waited a long time for this. 20 years, to be exact. 20 years since the warehouse fire that had killed 2 men and erased thousands of dollars worth of stolen goods. The official record had called it an accident. Faulty wiring, they said, but Doyle knew better. He had been a young officer then, sharp and hungry, and he'd seen the signs. Accelerant, footprints, the quiet orders from above to close the case. Now as he watched Vincent Marino slam the phone down and stand in silence, Doyle felt the past quicken in his blood. Inside the restaurant, Michael pressed his father again. "Pop, what's going on? Who was that man?" Vincent's eyes, dark and heavy, shifted to the window. He could feel the eyes watching, even through the rain. "You don't want to know, Michael. Not now." NBUT Michael wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man with ambition, always looking for an edge, a chance to step out of his father's shadow. He slammed his hand on the counter. "I'm sick of your secrets. If there's a debt hanging over this family, I've got a right to know. Vincent's temper flickered, but before words could spill, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. The restaurant door opened, and a tall figure stepped in, trench coat dripping. Detective Doyle removed his fedora and tapped the water from its brim. His face was older now, hair thinning, lines etched deep by disappointment and late nights, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Evening, Marino," Doyle said, his voice low, calm, but edged with something sharp. "It's been a long time," Vincent stiffened. "You're trespassing, Doyle." Michael looked between them, confused. "You two know each other?" Doyle's gaze stayed fixed on Vincent. "We go back." 263. Michael froze. The fire. Vincent's silence was an answer in itself. Doyle stepped closer, water dripping onto the tile floor. "You see, Marino, some things stick. Some smells don't wash out. I still remember the stench of kerosene at that warehouse. The screams under the crack of wood beams. You might have fooled the city, but you didn't fool me." Now Vincent's jaw tightened. "If you had proof, Doyle, you'd have used it years ago." A ghost of a smile crossed Doyle's face. "Proof is funny. Sometimes it takes 20 years to find it. And sometimes it comes knocking at midnight." NNHE pulled a folded paper from his pocket and set it on the counter. A typed message. Michael's eyes widened. It was identical to the letter they had just received. Doyle said softly, "You're not the only one getting letters, Vincent." NTHE room went still. Rain pounded harder against the windows. A steady drumbeat of tension. Michael's mind raced. If Doyle was receiving letters too, then someone was orchestrating this, pulling strings from the shadows. But who? And why now? Vincent picked up the paper, studied it, then looked Doyle squarely in the eye. "You'd better be careful, detective. Chasing ghosts will get a man killed." Doyle leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I'm not chasing ghosts. I'm chasing you. And this time, I'm not stopping." NHE turned and walked back into the rain, his figure swallowed by the darkness. Michael looked at his father, his voice shaking with anger and fear. "What did you do, Pop?" Vincent sat heavily in the booth, rubbing his temples. "Something I swore I'd never tell you. Something that might cost us everything." Across town, in a smoky backroom bar, Enzo Romano poured himself a glass of whiskey and whispered to an unseen figure. "By tomorrow night, the Marino family will be begging for mercy. A family secret is like a crack in the foundation. It may be hidden for years, but one storm, one tremor, and the whole house can come down." NNTHE Marino home smelled of rosemary and old wood. Photographs lined the hallway. Vincent's late wife smiling at the beach, Michael and his younger sister, Sofia, playing in the yard, birthdays, holidays, moments of warmth preserved like fragile glass. But tonight, the house felt colder than it ever had. Michael paced in the kitchen, fists tight at his sides. "You can't keep this from us, Pop. If Doyle knows something, if this Enzo knows something, we're sitting ducks." "Tell me the truth." Vincent sat at the table, shoulders heavy, a glass of bourbon untouched in front of him. "The truth can destroy a man, Michael. And it can destroy a family. Do you want that on your hands?" Michael snapped back. "What destroys a family is lies." NTHE's sharpness of his voice carried up the stairs, where Sofia lingered at the landing. At 26, she was softer in manner than her brother, but her eyes carried the same fire. She descended quietly, stepping into the kitchen. "What's going on?" Neither man answered. Sofia looked from her father to her brother. "I heard you last night too. The phone call. The letter. Don't tell me it's nothing." "I deserve to know." Vincent exhaled slowly, defeated. "It goes back to 1963, a warehouse fire. I was young, stupid, trying to prove myself. Enzo Romano and I, we were part of something bigger. We were moving stolen goods through the city. That night, something went wrong. The fire started fast and hot. 2 men didn't make it out." And Sofia's eyes widened. You killed them?" Vincent slammed his fist on the table. "I didn't start the fire, but I didn't stop it either. When the smoke cleared, Enzo wanted to blame me, said I owed him for the losses. I walked away, built a new life, and left it behind. But men like Enzo, They never forget. Michael stood still, heart pounding. So this whole time, the restaurant, the house, the family dinners, you built it all on ashes? Vincent's voice cracked with pain. I built it to protect you, to give you a life outside of that world, but the past doesn't let go. Silence stretched between them, thick with anger, fear, and betrayal. Then Sofia spoke, her voice steady but sharp. If Enzo is coming after us, then hiding won't save us. We need to be ready. We need to fight. Vincent looked at her with sorrow. You don't know what you're saying, Sofia. You fight a man like Enzo, you lose more than your pride. You lose your soul. Michael's eyes burned. Maybe you already lost yours. Pop and The words cut deeper than he intended. Vincent rose slowly, his face pale but his voice hard. If you want to survive this, you'll listen to me. Both of you. This isn't about pride or revenge. This is about keeping our family alive. Before anyone could answer, a sharp knock rattled the front door. All three froze. McCall whispered, "It's past midnight." Who could that be? Vincent motioned them back, his hand reaching instinctively for the drawer where he kept an old revolver. He stepped cautiously to the door and pulled it open. There, on the porch, stood a young courier in a soaked raincoat, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Delivery for Marino," he muttered. Vincent frowned. At this hour, The courier shrugged, thrust the package forward, and disappeared into the rain before Vincent could ask more. Vincent closed the door, set the box on the table. Michael leaned in, heart hammering. "Don't open it," popped Vincent had to. With trembling hands, he peeled away the paper. Inside was a small tin box. He opened it slowly and froze. Within lay a burned wallet, the leather blackened, the initials JR still faintly visible. Sofia whispered, "Who's JR?" Vincent's face turned ashen. His voice was barely a whisper. "Joseph Romano. Enzo's brother. One of the men who died in the fire." Across town, Enzo lifted a glass in a dimly lit bar and smiled coldly. Now the Marinos know what it means to wake the dead. Old debts are never truly buried. When they resurface, they drag the living down with the dead. And Vincent stared at the charred wallet on the kitchen table as though it were a coffin. His hands trembled, not from the bourbon but from the memories clawing their way back to the surface. Sofia and Michael exchanged uneasy glances, the air heavy with dread. "This isn't just a warning," Vincent muttered. "It's a declaration." Michael leaned forward, fists clenched. "From Enzo?" Vincent nodded. "His brother Joseph was in that warehouse. I thought the fire swallowed everything. But if this survived, Enzo wants us to know he's holding the past in his hands." Sofia's voice cut the silence. "So what does he want? Money? Blood?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "Enzo never cared about money. This is about vengeance. And vengeance doesn't end until someone's in the ground." The clock ticked past 1 in the morning. Rain lashed against the windows like impatient fingers. Michael couldn't contain his anger. "We can't just sit here, Pop. He's coming after us. We need to take the fight to him." And Vincent shook his head. "That's exactly what he wants. If we move first, we're on his ground. He knows every alley, every man still loyal to him. We'd be dead before we made a dent." And Sofia stepped closer, her voice steadier than either man expected. "Then what's the plan? Because waiting feels like dying slow." And Vincent's eyes softened for a moment as he looked at her. "The plan is survival. Keep your heads down. Don't let him bait us into a war we can't win." Michael slammed his fist on the table, rattling the tin box. "That's not survival. That's surrender." Before the argument could rise again, the phone rang. Its shrill cry cut through the room like a knife. Vincent hesitated, then picked it up. Voice hissed on the other end. "Marino, I hear your children are eager. Brave, even. That's good. They'll need courage when they're kneeling." Vincent gripped the receiver tighter. "Enzo, leave them out of this. Your fight is with me." Enzo's laugh was low and bitter. With you? You've already been punished, Vincent. You've lived all these years in guilt. No, this isn't about you anymore. This is about legacy. About reminding your bloodline what happens when a Marino crosses a Romano. NNTHE line went dead, and Vincent lowered the receiver slowly. His face was pale, but his voice was calm. He's coming for both of you now. This isn't about debts anymore. It's about blood. Michael's fury gave way to fear. Then we hit him first. We find him. End this before it starts. Sofia touched her brother's arm, but her words were directed at their father. What aren't you telling us, Pop? There's something more. I can see it. Enzo wouldn't wait 20 years just for revenge. Not unless he lost more than a brother in that fire. Vincent closed his eyes, pain etched across his face. It wasn't just Joseph who died that night. There was a boy, a witness. Innocent. He should never have been there. And Enzo believes I struck the match. NNTHE room went still. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. Did you? Vincent's eyes opened, dark and hollow. I didn't start that fire. But I didn't stop it either. And to Enzo, that makes me guilty. And Sofia stepped back, her hands shaking. So all these years, we've been living under the shadow of a child's death? Before Vincent could answer, the sharp crack of glass shattered the silence. A brick came crashing through the front window, landing on the floor with a thud. Wrapped around it was another note. Michael snatched it up, his heart pounding. He read aloud, Nen, the Bloodline Oath must be paid. 1 Marino for 1 Romano. At that same hour, Detective Doyle sat alone in his apartment, staring at his own copy of the same note. Only his bore a chilling addition at the bottom. You'll bear witness when the debt is settled. Justice is a fragile thing. For some it's the law, for others it's blood. But when the two collide, one must give way. Detective Doyle sat in the dim glow of his desk lamp, the note lying before him like a curse. His apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rattle of rain against the glass. He'd seen death threats before, most cops had, but this one carried a weight that twisted his gut. The Bloodline Oath must be paid, he muttered, rereading the words. And then, the part that chilled him most, you'll bear witness. Doyle poured himself a measure of cheap whiskey, the kind that burned but never soothed. He stared into the glass, memories dragging him backward. His first years on the force, the warehouse fire, the bodies pulled out of the rubble. One of them had been a Romano. Another. Just a boy. He'd never forgotten the sight of that child's charred shoes. NNHI's phone buzzed, snapping him back. It was Michael Marino. And Detective? It's happening. Enzo's coming for us. He sent another note tonight. He wants blood. Doyle rubbed his temples. Slow down, Michael. Where's your father? In the kitchen. He's shaken, but he won't admit it. He says hiding is survival. I say it's waiting to die. Doyle's voice hardened. You listen to me. If Enzo Romano is moving pieces, then you need protection. All of you. I'll put a car outside your house. Maybe even a safe house if I can swing it. But you've got to trust me, not your instincts. Michael's frustration crackled over the line. And what happens when protection isn't enough? You saw what he did in the past. You think a patrol car scares him? Michael, Doyle said, steady. Vengeance makes men sloppy, but fear makes them reckless. If you go charging at him, you'll hand him exactly what he wants. Another Marino corpse. NTHE's silence on the other end told Doyle he'd struck a nerve. When the call ended, Doyle sat back, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Enzo Romano, how the man had slipped through his fingers for years. Doyle had testified, gathered evidence, chased every lead. But Enzo was always 2 steps ahead. Corruption in the department, frightened witnesses, missing files. It had all added up to nothing. And now, decades later, Enzo was back to settle the score. And Doyle's apartment felt suddenly smaller, the shadows darker. He couldn't ignore the truth anymore. He wasn't just an observer. Enzo had pulled him into the game as a witness, maybe even a pawn. NNHE pulled open a desk drawer and took out an old case file, the edges yellowed with time. Inside were photographs from the warehouse fire. Doyle flipped through them. Burnt beams, scorched walls, body bags. He stopped at one picture, a young boy's bicycle, twisted and blackened, half melted near the rubble. The image still haunted him. NNTHE boy's name had been Anthony Romano. Joseph's son N. Doyle closed the file slowly. That was the truth Enzo carried like a blade. Not just a brother's death, but a child's. And to Enzo, Vincent Marino was the man who'd stolen both. NNTHE detective poured another glass of whiskey but left it untouched. He picked up his coat and holstered his gun. If the past was coming alive again, he wasn't going to meet it drunk. And as he reached the door, his phone buzzed again. A text, no name attached, just a number he didn't recognize. The message read, "Nen. Stay out of it, Doyle. You failed once. Don't fail again." And Doyle froze. His instincts screamed that someone was watching, maybe even outside his building. He moved quietly to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to glance down. In a black sedan, idled at the curb, engine running, headlights off. Before he could react, the car pulled away into the rain-slick night. Doyle whispered to himself, "The war's already started." At that very hour, miles away, Enzo Romano raised his glass to a table of loyal men. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice low and certain, "the Marino family learns the price of an oath. Sometimes the past doesn't just return. It surrounds you, suffocates you, until you can't tell friend from enemy." NNTHE Marino home felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. The broken glass from the brick had been swept away, but the weight of the note lingered, pressing down on every breath. Sofia stood by the window, staring out at the rain, her arms wrapped around herself as though bracing against a storm only she could feel. Nakel paced the living room like a caged animal. "We can't just sit here," Pop Doyle says. "Protection is enough. But you know better. Enzo doesn't care about police cars. He'll come right through them." Vincent sat heavily in his chair, his face carved with exhaustion. "And what do you suggest? That we run into his arms with guns drawn? You think you can win a war he's been preparing for 20 years? Michael stopped pacing, his fists clenched. Better to die fighting than waiting. Sofia turned from the window, her voice trembling but firm. "And what about me, Michael? You're so eager to run into bullets. Do you think Enzo will spare me because I didn't light the fire? No, he'll take me too, just to make you suffer." NNTHE room went silent. Vincent looked at his daughter with something close to pride. She was afraid, yes, but she spoke the truth without flinching. NNTHE quiet was broken with a knock at the door. 3 slow raps. Michael tensed, hand going to the revolver tucked in his waistband. That's not Doyle's knock. Vincent motioned for silence and moved carefully to the door. "Who is it?" A voice came through, muffled but calm. "Detective Doyle. Open up." Michael hesitated, then unlocked the door, revolver still in hand. Doyle stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat, his eyes sharp but weary. He glanced at the revolver and gave a half smile. "I see paranoia runs in the family." "Not paranoia." Michael shot back. "Survival." Doyle nodded once, acknowledging the point. He moved into the room, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully. Enzo's not just sending messages. He's moving. I saw his men tonight. Shadows where they shouldn't be. Black sedan outside my place. They want me quiet." Vincent leaned forward. "Then he knows you're involved. That makes you a target too." Doyle's gaze hardened. "I've been a target since the fire, Vincent. I just didn't know he'd wait this long to collect." Sofia stepped closer. "Detective, what does he really want? Is this only about Joseph? Or the boy?" NNTHE question cut the air like glass. Vincent flinched, but Doyle didn't look away. "Anthony Romano," he said quietly. "Joseph's son. He was there that night. He died in the fire. Enzo never forgave anyone he thought responsible." And Sofia whispered, "A child." Doyle nodded. "That's why this isn't just vengeance. This is religion to Enzo. He calls it the Bloodline Oath. One life for one life. He believes balance must be restored." Michael's voice broke in, sharp. "Then let him come for me. Better me than her." And Sofia spun on him, furious. "Don't you dare play the martyr. That's not courage, it's cowardice. You'd rather throw yourself into his fire than fight for something better?" NTHE argument was cut short by a noise outside. Tires crunching gravel, then silence. Doyle drew his gun instantly, signaling for them to stay quiet. He moved to the window, peering through the narrow slit of the curtain. His jaw tightened. NNTWO men stood in the shadows across the street, smoking, watching the house. "Enzo's already here," Doyle muttered. Vincent's breath caught. "Then it's begun." Before anyone could respond, the phone rang again. Its shrill cry sliced through the tension. Michael grabbed it before anyone else could. "What do you want?" a voice answered, smooth and venomous. "Enzo Romano. Not you, boy. Not yet. Put your father on." Michael's hand shook as he thrust the phone to Vincent. Vincent raised it to his ear, his voice low. "Enzo." Nenzo's chuckle was cold. "Your detective can see my men, can't he?" "Good. Let him watch. Let him witness what happens when the bloodline debt is paid." Vincent's eyes darted to the window. "If you touch them, Enzo, I swear, you'll do nothing." Enzo cut him off. "Because tomorrow, Vincent, tomorrow the first Marino falls." NNTHE line went dead. Outside, the two men flicked their cigarettes into the gutter and walked away, leaving behind a single envelope on the hood of Doyle's car. Inside, when he later opened it, was a photograph of Michael, taken through the window just minutes earlier. Threats become promises when the first blood is spilled. NNTHE Knight was restless inside the Marino home. Michael refused to sleep, pacing the hallway like a guard dog, his revolver never leaving his grip. Sofia stayed in her room, the lamp burning until dawn, as if darkness itself was complicit in Enzo's plot. Vincent sat in silence, staring at the kitchen table, a man caught between past sins and present terrors. Detective Doyle had stationed himself by the window, his gun close, his nerves taut. The photograph of Michael in the envelope lay between them all like a death warrant. "They're watching every move," Doyle muttered. "They want you afraid, Jumpy. That's how they make mistakes." Michael's jaw tightened. "Then let me make one mistake worth something." Vincent slammed his palm on the table. "Enough. This is not a duel, Michael. This is a vendetta older than you. Enzo doesn't just want your life. He wants our ruin." NTHE argument dissolved when the sound came. First distant, then growing louder. Sirens, not approaching them, but racing somewhere nearby. Doyle's instincts flared. "Stay here," he ordered, snatching his coat. "I'll find out what's happening." Michael followed him to the door. "If it's Enzo," Doyle cut him off. "If it's Enzo, you'll know soon enough." NHE slipped into the rain-slick night, the sirens echoing down the block. By the time he reached the corner, flashing lights painted the street in crimson and blue. A small crowd had gathered, umbrellas bobbing like dark flowers. Doyle pushed his way through, flashing his badge. What he saw hollowed his chest. An body lay on the pavement, half shrouded by a white sheet. Blood seeped into the gutter, diluted by rain. Next to the corpse, the broken remains of a chair, splintered wood, nails jutting out, suggested a savage beating, and an officer whispered to Doyle, named Tommy Gallucci. Small-time bookie, used to run errands for the Romano crew. Doyle's throat tightened. He'd seen Gallucci years before, young, eager, desperate to make his way up the ladder. Now he was just another message carved in flesh. NHE turned to the officer. "Witnesses?" Neighbors heard shouting, then a car speeding off. "That's it." Doyle knelt near the body. On the sheet, placed deliberately, was another envelope. He didn't need to open it to know it was meant for him. And back at the Marino home, the family rose when Doyle returned, his coat dripping, his expression grim. He dropped the envelope on the table. Michael tore it open before anyone could stop him. Inside was a photograph, grainy black and white, taken years ago. It showed Vincent, younger, standing outside the very warehouse that had burned. Behind him, smoke curled into the night. Name on the back of the photo, scrawled in ink. Name. One witness down. Tomorrow, another. Until only you remain. Sofia gasped, covering her mouth. Vincent's face drained of color. "It's starting," Doyle said, his voice like stone. "Enzo's taking out everyone tied to that fire, one by one." Michael slammed his fist on the wall. "Then we strike first. Find him, End this before he reaches us." Doyle rounded on him, furious. "And what then?" "You shoot Enzo, his men bury you alive. You don't stop a blood feud with bullets, Michael. You only feed it." Vincent rose from his chair, trembling but resolute. "He's right. Enzo won't stop until balance is restored." And Sofia's eyes filled with tears. "And what is balance, father? Another coffin?" Silence crushed the room. The only sound was the rain outside, steady, relentless, like a clock counting down. Finally, Doyle spoke. "Enzo won't wait long. Tonight was the first strike. Tomorrow," he paused, staring at Michael. "Tomorrow, it's you." At that same moment, in a candlelit room across town, Enzo Romano stood before a row of loyal men. On the table lay photographs of every surviving Marino. Enzo tapped Michael's picture with a knife and whispered, "The boy dies at dawn. Morning can bring hope, or the promise of death." The Marino house was wrapped in silence as night bled into dawn. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining under the pale glow of street lamps. But inside, sleep was impossible. Each member of the family listened for footsteps, for a car door slamming, for the sound of death arriving. Michael sat at the kitchen table, staring at the revolver resting in front of him. He ran his fingers along the barrel, not out of affection, but as if memorizing the last tool he might ever hold. Sofia brewed coffee, though no one drank it. Her hands shook with every motion, spilling more than she poured. And Vincent, older than his years, sat silently in the corner. His breathing was labored, his eyes shadowed. The burden of choices made decades ago pressed against his chest like iron. Detective Doyle paced. His every glance at the window was a calculation, a preparation for the inevitable. "Enzo won't come himself," he muttered. "He'll send others. Pawns, to test the waters." Michael's voice was sharp. "And we kill them," Doyle snapped back. "You think this is a Western duel? Every shot you fire doubles the number of men who come for you. This isn't about victory, it's about survival." Sofia's voice trembled. "But you said Michael's next." Doyle stopped pacing. His silence was answer enough. NNTHE minutes dragged like hours, until, just after dawn, the sound came. Tires crunching against gravel. A car is pulling up outside. Michael jumped to his feet, gun in hand. Doyle pressed him back against the wall. "Wait, let me see first." They crept toward the window. A black sedan idled at the curb, its engine purring low. Two men stepped out, dressed in dark coats, their faces obscured by hats pulled low. Michael whispered, "It's them." Before Doyle could answer, a third figure climbed out from the back seat. Taller. Older. Moving with a slow, deliberate gait. Vincent saw him and froze. His breath rattled in his throat. "No," he whispered. "Not him." KHE figure raised his head. Even from across the street, his face was unmistakable. Enzo Romano himself had come. Doyle's eyes widened. "That's impossible. He never risks himself." Vincent's hands gripped the arms of his chair. "He wants me to see it. He wants me to watch." NTHE men across the street lit cigarettes, their smoke curling in the dawn air. They weren't rushing, weren't hiding. They wanted to be seen, and Sofia's voice was barely audible. "What do we do?" Doyle pulled his gun, jaw clenched. "We wait. If they make a move, we act." And Enzo didn't move toward the house. Instead, he pulled something from his coat pocket and tossed it onto the hood of the sedan. It glinted in the morning light, a small, silver crucifix. Michael's fury boiled over. "That's it. That's for me. He's mocking me, mocking us." Before anyone could stop him, Michael threw open the door and stepped onto the porch, revolver raised. "Enzo!" he shouted, his voice cracking through the quiet street. "Come finish it!" And Sofia screamed behind him. "Michael! No!" Enzo looked up slowly, his expression calm, almost serene. He didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, he spread his arms wide, as though offering himself. Michael's hands shook on the gun. His breathing was ragged. From behind, Doyle charged forward, slamming into him, forcing the revolver down. "You'll kill us all," he hissed. NNBUT. Michael shoved him off, eyes locked on Enzo. This ends today. At that moment, the two men beside Enzo reached inside their coats. Guns flashed in the morning light. Michael's finger tightened on the trigger. NNTHE Street erupted in gunfire. When the smoke cleared, Enzo was gone, his sedan roaring away. On the Marino porch, Michael staggered, blood soaking through his shirt, a bullet lodged deep in his side. He collapsed into Sofia's arms, whispering only one word. Why? Every feud demands payment. This morning, the debt comes due. Blood pooled across the porch steps as Michael writhed in Sofia's arms. Her cries echoed through the quiet street, raw and desperate. Doyle tore off his coat, pressing it against the wound. Stay with me, Michael. Don't you quit now. Michael's face twisted with pain, his breath shallow. I had him, Doyle. I had him. Vincent limped forward, his cane trembling under his grip. His eyes burned with fury, not at Enzo, not at Doyle, but at himself. This is my doing, he whispered. My sins, my war, and my son pays the price. Sofia looked up, her voice breaking. Then end it, father. Do something. And BUT Doyle snapped back, his voice sharp as steel. No! Enzo wants us to strike out blindly. That's how he wins. You think this is about Michael? No. It's about burning every last trace of the Marino name to ash. They dragged Michael back inside, laying him on the couch. His skin was pale, his shirt soaked crimson. He clutched Doyle's sleeve with surprising strength. Don't let her. Don't let Sofia. His words faltered, his head lolling. Sofia sobbed, shaking him. No, Michael. Stay with me. Doyle's jaw set. We need a doctor. Now. Vincent shook his head. A doctor means questions. Questions mean reports. Reports mean Enzo knows we're weak. He'll finish us before the stitches are tied. Doyle glared. So we let him bleed to death? That's your solution. Silence. Only Michael's ragged breathing filled the room. Finally, Vincent spoke, his voice a rasp. There's someone. A man who owed me once. He saved lives in the war, quietly, no questions asked. He can help. Doyle didn't argue. He simply grabbed the car keys. Then we move. Now. They carried Michael out under the gray dawn, every shadow on the street a threat. Sofia sat in the back with her brother, clutching his hand, whispering prayers. Vincent rode up front, his face locked in grim determination. Now, Doyle drove. He glanced in the mirror. A black car had appeared 2 lengths behind them. Then another. NNHI's stomach sank. They're tailing us. Vincent's hand tightened on the dashboard. They want him dead before he reaches help. Doyle floored the accelerator, the car roaring as it shot down the slick streets. Tires screamed, horns blared, and behind them the black sedans gave chase. And Sofia cried out, They're getting closer! Bullets shattered the rear window, glass raining down over Michael's limp body. Doyle swerved hard into an alley, sparks flying as the car scraped brick walls. The pursuing sedans tried to follow, but one skidded, crashing into a lamppost. NNTHE, other, stayed tight on their trail. Enol's hands gripped the wheel, sweat dripping from his brow. Vincent! Directions! Where's this man of yours? Vincent barked out turns, his voice hoarse but steady. Each corner brought them closer to salvation, or a trap. Finally, they burst into an industrial district. warehouses looming like silent giants. Vincent pointed. There, the old machine shop. Doyle slammed the brakes, skidding to a stop. They leapt from the car, dragging Michael with them. Sofia's screams tore through the air as another volley of bullets ricocheted off metal doors. Inside the warehouse, shadows swallowed them whole. A figure emerged from the dark, a thin, gray-haired man in suspenders, his eyes sharp despite his age. Vincent called out, breathless, "Angelo! For the love of God, help us!" Man's eyes fell on Michael's bleeding form. Without a word, he motioned them to a table, pulling out instruments wrapped in cloth. But before he could begin, the sound came. Doors slamming outside, footsteps closing in, the predators circling their prey. Doyle raised his gun, his voice low, deadly calm. "They've found us." As Angelo prepared his tools, Sofia clutched her brother's hand. "Don't leave me, Michael, please." Michael's eyes fluttered open just long enough to whisper, "Tell father I know." What did he mean? Some secrets demand to be told, even if the truth shatters everything. Warehouse was dark, echoing with the distant sounds of pursuit. Doyle positioned himself near the entrance, gun drawn, listening to every footstep, every heartbeat. Vincent hovered over Michael, who lay pale and barely conscious on the table. Sofia clung to his hand, tears streaming freely. Angelo worked quickly, hands steady despite the chaos. A deep breath, a stitch here, a bandage there. Michael groaned softly, his eyes fluttering open. "Hang on," Doyle said, kneeling beside him. Vincent's voice shook. "I should have told you. I should have told all of you, years ago." Michael's lips moved, barely audible. "It's not your fault, Pop." "I know." Vincent froze. "No? Know what?" Michael's eyes, weak but fierce, met his father's. "I know why. I know why you stayed silent. You tried to protect us. From the world. From yourself. From him." And Sofia's sobs broke the silence. "From Enzo? You think that matters now?" And Vincent shook his head. "I thought hiding the truth would shield you. But the past, it doesn't care about intentions." Doyle checked the bandages. "He'll survive, but it'll be slow. He's lucky Angelo's here." Outside, the warehouse doors burst open. Enzo's silhouette appeared, flanked by two men. The gunfire that followed was deafening, but Doyle and Vincent fought their way to safety, Angelo shielding Michael as Sofia stayed by his side. Finally, Enzo stood alone in the open, his face calm, almost mournful. Vincent stepped forward, cane in hand, defiance in his eyes. "And Enzo," he said, voice low, "this ends now." Enzo's eyes softened for the first time in decades. "Vincent, you've carried the weight longer than I imagined. I wanted vengeance, but all I found was grief. Your grief, my grief. And the boy, Anthony's ghost, has haunted me too." And Vincent's hand trembled. "Then why send the threats? The Bloodline Oath?" Enzo exhaled, bitter. "Because I didn't know if you'd ever confess. I needed to see if a Marino could take responsibility, face the past. And now I know. You have tension dissolved, replaced by the quiet weight of years." Enzo's men withdrew, leaving him standing in the pale morning light. Michael stirred on the table, weak but alive. "Pop," he whispered. Vincent knelt beside him. "I'll always protect you. Always." Then Sofia hugged her brother. "You scared us to death." Michael managed a weak smile. "Worth it, knowing the truth." Doyle exhaled, lowering his gun. "Sometimes the law can't fix everything, but understanding can save what's left." Vincent looked toward Enzo, who simply nodded and walked away. In the silence, father and children remained together, battered but unbroken. Vincent whispered to them, "The past will always be a shadow, but we decide if it defines us or strengthens us. We survive. Together." And outside, the first rays of the sun struck the wet streets of Chicago. The city moved on, unaware of the quiet redemption, the fragile peace won in a warehouse at dawn. Marino family survived, but the scars of choices made long ago remained. Michael healed. Vincent bore the weight of confession, and Sofia learned that family, blood or otherwise, was the only shield against the past's unrelenting hand. NNTHE Bloodline Oath had demanded payment. But in the end, it had brought them truth, forgiveness, and the chance to rebuild.